Hello, everyone. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I don't even remember when was the last time I was here. I was doing coffee and code for like a month and a half every single week. And then I had to stop because I needed a vacation. And then I went to some events. And so I am back. And today I'm not alone. But before we jump into that, I wanted to tell you some things. So, in the previous versions of this live stream, we were working on implementing a Ruby SDK for OpenFGA. And along the way, we learned or we were trying to figure out what it was like to work with like the auto-generated code from the SDK generator versus writing it myself, like what were the trade-offs there. And, it was all kind of like, we were talking a lot about how the developer experience on using the SDK was going to be like. But then I thought that it would be interesting to talk about something different today, still around the topic of OpenFGA, but more as a user of OpenFGA instead of someone that is, implementing this SDK kind of situation. And as you know, I'm still learning how OpenFGA works and trying to get my head around all the concepts and whatnot. So I'm not the one that's going to be talking about this. So I want to welcome to the stage, if I found the button, right, who is one of the core members of the OpenFGA team and who is going to be talking today about modeling and is going to give us a little introduction to that. Welcome, Rag.
Hello. Hi. Hi, Carla. Hi, everyone.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Nice. Well, I gave Rag like a little bit of an introduction on that. I do a bit of a coffee conversation in every stream because it's called Coffee and Code, so we talk about coffee and then we code. Um, and I think we have some thoughts. So I'm gonna start. I'm personally I drink my coffee normally, like I make myself lattes. I have an espresso machine, so I make an espresso shot and then I froth the milk. It takes me about 10 minutes to make my morning coffee. I ground the beans, I do the whole thing. Like I really like that. It's like a cathartic process for me almost to make my coffee. I do have like other ways to make coffee, like other like filtered coffee and stuff. But to be honest, I haven't been using them much. And I don't know. I want to know, what are your thoughts on coffee? How do you drink your coffee? I want to hear it all.
So my coffee preference personally is a bit on the bitter side. I come from Lebanon, so and we were ruled by the Ottomans at some point. So our base is the Turkish coffee, which I don't know if everyone knows about it, but it's I mean, you boil it over water, but you have the grounds like in the water, and you don't filter them out. So you have them, you boil them and then you pour, and you usually don't like drink the way they do here, like a whole mug, because you're gonna have a heart attack if you do.
It's
Very
quite like,
yeah, it's very intense. It's very like you put a lot and then all of that goes into this much of coffee, so there's little water and a lot of coffee in there. But the what in Lebanon they did, and like a few other places in the area, an extension of that, which is my preference, is that coffee but with cardamom, and the flavors you get are just intense and amazing. That is
what?
my absolute favorite. Usually we brew it in something like this over
Oh, I
water.
love it.
If you have not a great attention span like myself, you end up always having coffee all over like the stove because it boils over, and but then you get the cool smells of burning coffee, which is not bad.
That's my actually. I didn't know, or actually didn't think of adding anything else to my coffee. I've seen people do things like I saw a video the other day, and they were making an espresso shot, and they added the coffee and then berries to the to
Benny's.
the thing, and so apparently they got some sort of like berry coffee flavored. I don't know. It looked. I don't know. I'm not a fruity coffee person. I like my coffee more like chocolatey kind of. But honestly,
Uh,
why not? I whenever I talk and I say that I really like coffee and I really like enjoy coffee, people tend to look at me and say things like, "Oh no, but I'm not an expert." I'm like, I'm not an expert. I just know that I like this coffee. Why? I don't know. I don't taste the notes. I don't taste anything. It's like this is good. I don't like this one. Like I don't know. I don't know
Exactly. If
what
you
you.
ask me, like, what's the perfect temperature to boil coffee at, I would have no idea. I just do my coffee every day, drink it. It tastes good, way better than the coffee you buy outside, which means it's also cheaper.
Yeah.
And but speaking of adding things to coffee, I think I don't know if the generic Mexican coffee, but I think they have a drink where they add cinnamon to the coffee and lots of sugar, and that's also super delicious. Like I don't know, are we? I don't know if it's offensive to anyone that we're adding things to coffee, but it's pretty good.
I mean, cinnamon. Yeah, I think I've done with cinnamon. In some places where when you get a cappuccino, I put cinnamon as well. So cinnamon, I can handle. The fruits though, I'm not sure yet. But yeah, and then same like the. So at one time, before I had my espresso machine, I had a mocha pot, like the one that you put on the stove, the Italian one. Uh, and apparently, there's this very specific way of making coffee in that. So normally you just put the water, put the coffee, close it, and then put it on the stove. Apparently, you have to actually boil the water first, put it hot in the mocha pot, then put the coffee, then close it. Um, I never did it like that. And it turns out that when I tried to do it like that, I didn't like the flavor of, like, it changed the flavor of the coffee a lot. So I was like, yeah, this might be the way to do it, but I didn't like it. So I was like, I'm just going to stick to the way I like it. In the end, I think it's just a matter of, I like what I'm drinking, I'm enjoying it, and that's it.
For me, like as much as I love coffee, it's not the only because it's sometimes I get bored. So coffee and tea and mate, which is my favorite, are all like something you drink a lot, and
Yeah.
juices. So I'm like, it's not that I love coffee. I also love all the other liquids.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get you. But yeah, I think maybe we should get into the topic today because I feel like we might
We're
run out of
energized.
time.
We
But
took our coffee. We're energized. Let's get into
yeah, I've had three today, so I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, today we're talking about intro or like giving an introduction to modeling. Fully transparent statement that I'm going to say. The modeling that I've done with OpenFGA so far has been very much based on the examples that are already out there. So I haven't like done it from scratch myself. So I'm looking very much and selfishly looking forward to learn how this is done. So I'm gonna let you tell me everything.
before we get into, so I'll start with the basics, but before we get into even the modeling basics, just like a recap of what OpenFGA is. So OpenFGA is a way to authorize and not authenticate, and there's a difference between the two. So authorize your requests. So it's basically a way to ask, can this person or user or client application do this action uh, on the on this object? So can I enter this room? Can Ragged enter this room? So who establishes that I'm Ragged? It's a separate process. It's like your IDP, whatever you're using, Keycloak or Zero. They're the ones who establish you do the authentication, establish who you say you are. After that process is done, you're in a big place and you want to enter rooms. Who establishes whether you can enter a room or not? That's the authorization. Are you authorized to enter? Now that we know who you are, and that's the open FGA part. So that's authorization. Authorization has had many like iterations over the years. Like most people understand it like in terms of a role base. So I'm an admin,
Yeah.
so I have access to all of these. I'm a manager, I have access to approve expense reports. I'm an engineer, I can SSH to servers, something like this. the problem with like role based, it's very limited. So next came or like there's other things, but ABAC was one huge improvement of it, that which added a lot of like extra context. So you can edit this document if its name starts with an N and your name starts with an N, some random stuff like that. That like it's based a lot on the context and of each object. So you need to have like all of this. Um, that said, like that requires holding all that context, and like that means depending on implementation, it doesn't always scale well and has a lot of things like this. Or I mean, it scales well for some implementations, for some use cases, but for many use cases, we needed something different, and that's where FGA and OpenFGA came. It's based on a paper published by Google in 2019 called Zanzibar, and it explains how Google does authorization for their services. So Google Docs, YouTube, Google Cloud, all of those stuff, and it's based on the relations. So like a user, how the entities in the system are related to one another. So that a folder is the parent of a document, which is the parent, which something like this, and this is in an org, and that org has a user. And what OpenFGA does is traverses that kind of graph now that we have to try to understand like if this user has access to do this action. That's it very quickly about like the uh, overall arcing principles of OpenFGA. And what does OpenFGA rely on? It's mainly two things. We have a model, and that model is fairly static, so it doesn't change a lot. And you're going to see, like, once we get into this, what a model is and what tuples are. Tuples are the other things we need. You can call them like they're the facts of your system. Like Carla is the host of this live stream. That's a tuple. Carla, host, live stream, coffee and code. So these sort of things are facts. These are things you know. So whether someone is someone else's manager, that's a fact. Like it's not like maybe, like you know it. And OpenFGA uses the model to traverse through the tuples as a graph and then understand like if there is a relation or like there is a path or there isn't. So your tuples change. Like if Carla invites someone else to be a co-host, that's going to change. They change a lot. You create a document, you share a document, you enter an org, you leave an org. Those are constantly changing tuples. Your model is static. It changes when you're introducing a new feature, maybe. You acquire a new company and you want to consolidate. Now you have a whole different use case. You're going to change your model. But it changes like when you roll out features rather than day-to-day use. That's like honestly the quick gist of it. There's a lot more to be said about those and how you can use models and things, but let's not get into the like now. Now let's start with, all right, we have models, we have tuples. What can we do with them? Before I start sharing, anything you want to mention, Carla?
No, I mean, I wanted to say that whenever I think of like not only OpenFGA but relationship-based access control, the first use case that always come to my head after probably like folders and documents, it's like a social network, because it's like all about relationships, and what you can see depends. Like, am I following you? Am I your friend? So yeah, I was just thinking about that when you were explaining it, because it's like the first thing that comes to mind.
And like, I'm not sure how like no, Zanzibar itself was thought like a lot of its concepts that came about were actually due to a social network, which is Google Plus, which is long gone now. So like Zanzibar itself, some of the implementations, and specifically around Zookies, like we're not going to go into those, but came about actually because of social network. And I don't know how much Zanzibar itself was inspired, but the ideas behind Zanzibar, and some of them were actually inspired by a paper that Facebook published a bit before, like again around how they deal with their relationships. So social network is obviously a very good use case, and like the whole sharing in general.
Nice. I didn't know that, actually. That's interesting. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get into this.
Here's. Can we see it? Yes.
Okay, so here, uh,
What's this?
we'll add them later to the resources. But what you're seeing here is VS Code with the OpenFGA VS Code extension. That's what's giving this the highlighting and things. And I'm gonna use the OpenFGA CLI to do like the tests and like validate. I'm not talking things randomly. Like this is actually working as it should. So where do you get the VS Code extension and where do you get the CLI? We'll share them later. But if you're using OpenFGA, definitely highly recommend them, especially when you're doing modeling, because they really help, and you're going to see why in a bit. Okay, now let's get started. What you're seeing on my left, this is an OpenFGA model. An OpenFGA model usually consists of, it always starts with model schema 1.1. Why 1.1? It's the version we support. There is 1.2 also that we support, and that has a concept called modules. We're not going to get into it today, but if you put 1.1 or 1.2 today, you're good. 1.0, we used to support it. It's not supported anymore. So, but in the future, we're probably going to have different versions. So right now, you're safe. If you put 1.1, you can proceed and work. Next, you can see things like type user and type org. What does that mean? Type user, type org, those are the entities in your system. So when we're talking about entities, where it's the kind of, if you're thinking about it from a software development sort of thing, it's kind of your class. So user is your abstract class. User Carla is like when you instantiate an instance of that class. So it's this, when you say type user, it's like an abstract concept of the user entity in your system. User is an entity. Same for org in this case, an organization. Which organization? That becomes instantiated later, but you have users, you have orgs, and the same applies to you have, like, you can have folders, documents, rooms, doors, laptops. If you're doing that IoT, you can get into phones, Raspberry Pis, whatever. So, but those are the types of entities in the system. And what we're going to model here is how they can potentially relate to one another. And here you can see this relations under the type org. We're saying define member and user. What this is saying, member is a relation on the org. So someone or something can be related to org as a member. And what you see between these brackets, square brackets, user. So we're saying the type of that something that is related to orgs is of type user. So an org cannot be a member of another org. A user can't be. So that's what this is saying. You'll see later where we add more things here, and you can add different things. But right now, what we're saying is we have a system where you have organizations, you have users, and users can be members of those organizations. That's all this is saying.
And then, so here, for example, here we're saying that the users are actually named user, but you could name them something else, right? Because something I've noticed with OpenFGA is that you have users and you have objects. The objects you can name whatever, but there always needs to be something that is a user, right?
No, not
no?
So we'll get into that here when we go into tuples. So tuples are always user relation object. This here is an entity of user. So this can be employee. It's fine. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
This is the type of thing, or use, or person. All of those. Or it can be something like, I don't know if we have it, like this is an application, like that. We don't even have a physical user. But what you're talking about, and we'll get to here, just quickly to explain what you're seeing here is a YAML file, and this is the file that our VS Code, our IntelliJ, and our CLI can interpret as like kind of a representation of a store. It's not all your data, but when you're doing testing, it helps modeling and testing your model. This helps because you can specify your tuples, you can reference your FGA file, and you can call tests on them, which is pretty cool because you can now run TDD on your modeling.
I was going to say, technically, you can do TDD on when you're doing your OpenFGA model.
Remind me if we have time at the end to see, like, to show in some cases how TDD first with FGA works, and it's pretty cool because it makes modeling so much easier. But here, this is what you were talking about. In a tuple, we have a tuple is always three things: user, relation, object. There's an optional thing called context, which is additional metadata about it. But the necessary three things are user, relation, object. User here does not mean a physical user. This is like the principle or the subject. So this is a thing that relates to another thing. So you can have a user, which is a folder. Let's like fold, or you can say organization Acme. Acme is the parent of organization Contoso. Notice that these are not users; these are just objects, other entities in the system. So this in the tuple, the word user is talking about the subject, like what is the thing that's related to the other. So that way. Now, it can get confusing when you have a type called user. In this case, this user is a type of object. So this now this is an actual user. Now, but this thing is still an object. A user is like user and can be related to
Gotcha.
can be a follower of user Beth, in which case they're both objects of entity type user, but the user is user and the object is user Beth. Okay, so that's it around like this idea of having user relation object. Again, user, principal, subject, any of those things work. Now we have our model, which is we have users, orgs, and users can be members of this org, and we have this just to show how the validation works. When I said this specifies that this must be a user. If you say org Acme is a member of org Contoso, this doesn't work because
Okay.
it's not allowed yet. If we allow it, this becomes okay. So that's the sort of validation.
Is that the VS Code extension doing that validation?
So
Random
here,
question.
yes, is the VS Code extension. But if you try to bypass, like if you try to write it through the SDK or the API, the server will validate the same way. It'll tell you like user is not allowed here, or organization is not allowed type restriction.
Nice.
And if you see like our playground and like our and there's like they all share the same basic validation, so it's all done in the same place. Okay, so now we have this. We're saying Anne is a member of the org. Let's test that. At least like this has no authorization. But let's test at least this is working. So what we're going to do is call it check, and this is how the basis of the authorization. We have writes where you write your facts. Writes are writes and deletes when you change your tuples. So here we wrote that Anne is a member. This is our fact, and now we're checking. So is Anne a member of Orcontoso? What we're saying here in our test, we expect this to be true, and we're expecting Beth, who is like, as you can see here, it's not part of this. Beth is not a member of this org, so we expect this to return false. And let's run this. This is how you run a test on this. So let's test this. Mistake something. Oh yeah, forgot to save. So here we tested this. It's saying one test, this is a single test, and two checks in this test. They all passed.
And what about like obviously right now we have a very small and like kind of basic model, let's call it like that. But what if you have like something like Google Drive, for example? Would you still write your tests in this YAML file or?
I mean, you can have. This is ultimately using the SD. This is using the Go SDK underneath the hood, so you can write your own thing. But I would suggest people keep trying writing tests here, and then if this is not enough, they can request features where, for example, you can write your tuples in another file. So because this also accepts like tuple underscore file.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And
Yeah, to keep only tests here. Yeah.
And we have a few requests about like they want to move tests. People want to move tests to different files. We don't have that yet, but as people grow and like get more like want more out of this, feature requests. This is an open source project. Feature requests and even better, pull requests.
Yeah.
Will be amazing. We'd love to support those. But
I have another question
yeah,
on this. And so now that, for example, here we will be testing both, let's say, any assertion about the user and the org, but can you have a test file for the users, a test file for the org, so kind of like splitting that into different files?
right now you can split the tests into multiple files themselves, but you can split them into multiple tests. I think you can see it later on in our. So you can have a test 2 that tackles a different use
Okay,
case.
okay, got you.
But yeah, splitting them into multiple files is an open issue right now. We haven't tackled it yet, but yeah, we would love to. And here you can see it, like VS Code is warning you. This is not an error. This is not an invalid thing. It's just warning you because when you're testing, sometimes you do lots of typos, and it's telling you, "Hey, warning! You're referencing Beth, but I don't see Beth in the tuples anywhere." So that's because a lot of people do like Bath here, and like they're like, "Why isn't this working?" It's just to warn you. But this is a valid check. Beth in this case is not a member of the org, and we want to ensure, like, part of your testing should be ensuring that not just the positive cases, but that the negative cases are also working. Because you don't want to grant everyone access. You want to make sure you're only granted access to the people you want. So in this case, again, we've done it through just to show you what it looks like when it's failing. So let's say we expect this to be false. If you done it, the CLI will tell you, okay, you told me you expect this check to return false, but I got true. So hey, something is off. Either your model is wrong, your tuples are wrong, or your test expectation is wrong. So that's what it looks like. Yeah, and this is like the fairly most basic thing you can get out of FGA. Like it's not really doing much.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into a slightly more complex use case, which we're adding. So we have members, but we also, in an org, we have admins, and only admins can invite other members. But every member of an org can see the org. So imagine this: you're doing a check. Someone loads the page of the org. You want to call, can this user view this org? So you'll call check user can view org, and either return a 4 or 3 if they can't, or like let them in and show them the page if they can. So, but again, when someone's trying to invite a member, though, you're gonna call check, can this user invite members? And that will only return true for admins because you don't want members to invite other members. And you'll see a few other concepts introduced here in the model. You'll see the first, these can invite members and can view no longer have this type thingy.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is these cannot be assigned. You cannot directly say a fact that Carla can invite users to the live stream. You cannot say that. That's not a fact. The fact is Carla is the host, and this is an inferred relationship. We call it like a computed user set. This is you're computing this out of this other one. So it can't be specified. It's not a direct relationship. And if you try to tell us this fact, we'll tell you, hey, this is not allowed because you don't tell us that this is allowed. But if you call check on this and you have this true, this will return true. So does that make sense in terms of?
Yes. When I was looking into this, my head went to Boolean logic with this, and X imply Y implies Z, then X implies Z kind of thing. So for me, like the way I would read this model, it would be like, okay, so can invite members, admin, and then I would go back to admin and then say, okay, so if it's a user, then I can invite members, but I have to be an admin. I don't know. That's how my brain would try to understand it.
That's exactly it. Like, and that's what the system ultimately does. When you ask us, can invite members, we will go look at the model, see admin here, go look at admin, and this requires users, and then go look at the database. Are there users or admins on this org? So that's exactly how it works.
And is there like a limit on how many? I don't know. Can I call them levels? Can you go? Because right now you have like let's say one level. So you look at can invite members, and then you have to look at admin, and then you ultimately get to the user. But is there a limit to that?
No, not really. There isn't limit. I mean, at some point, you're going to notice performance implications, especially if
Yeah.
so things like this don't have performance implications. So if you do
Oh, nice.
because what this is happening, or like have insanely minimal performance implications, because what's happening is all of this is being resolved in memory. So we're traversing the model in memory, and so there's no DB requests. But if all of these were assignable, so if we had to do this, what would happen is FGA is going to have to can do this on memory, because it's going to go here and then check the database. Are there anything can you invite members one? Then yes, no, and then go back here. Is there anyone who can invite members? So now there's a lot more DB reads happening, separate DB reads, which slows things down. So
Got it.
the more you have of course, it's going to affect your latency. But if you don't, like if it's just a rewrite like this, it has very minimal performance implication.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
One thing more I mentioned, like we introduced here, you'll notice the or. I mean, we talked about it, but or is what we're saying is if either of these are true, then this is true. So in order to evaluate can view, what we're looking for is member. Member is true if someone is directly assigned being a member. There's a tuple stating that they're a member, or they're an admin, which means there's a tuple stating that they're an admin. So if either of these is true, this becomes true. And we can see this here. So you can see Anne is a member of the org still. Beth is now an admin of the org. And when a test is okay, so Anne should be able to view but not invite members, because Anne, again, is not an admin. Beth can view and invite members because Beth is an admin. Charles, who has no relation whatsoever to the org, should not be able to do either. So should not be able to view the org, should not be able to invite members to the org. And let's quickly check that out. And yeah, you can see it. Like all 6 tests are passing. So test 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all of them passed.
Nice.
We're doing well in modeling.
I feel like it's gonna get bigger and bigger, isn't it?
Slightly. Okay, so now we have these. Just quickly, you're gonna see them later, but we have like or, but we also support and. So if you want to have this must be true and this must be true, you can have and. You can also have but not. So and, think of and for allow lists. So it's not just that you're a member of the org, but you also need to be allowed to view this. That's allow list. That's where you'd use an and. But not is more of a block list. So if you want to block someone from being able to access something, you'd use the but not. So they can be all members of an org except this one person because you don't like them. So now let's move to slightly. Again, we're adding small steps. We're not really going too much.
Our application is growing in use cases.
And that's exactly it. That's how this goes. Like when you're modeling, don't start modeling like insanely complex thing first. Start small and start adding what you want. You do want to model something important in your app. So, but that's something important. Start small. Make sure all the components are working and slightly build up so that when something bad, like something is failing, it's easier to reason about why it's failing rather than maybe, oh, nothing was working in the first place and I wrote this 200 line model, and then you reason about it and like you're lost. So, but yeah, so here again, small concept. Two things that we're introducing. One, this can support two things. Multiple. You can have user, org, like all of these are type restrictions.
Okay.
So now we introduce one more type restrictions. Like an admin can be a user, and then you're gonna see this weird syntax, which group #member. What does this mean? What we're saying is members of a group can be assigned an admin relation. So, and this is important. and you can see it here also. Like members of a group can be assigned to be members of the group, which is amazing because it allows you to have nesting so easy.
Mhm.
If you were doing this with other ways, like it's way harder to nest things and like have the access control work. Um, but I want to now indicate something that a lot of people miss, because sometimes when they want to see this, I mean, sometimes when you're thinking in English, you'd say, okay, this group is the admin of the org, and you divide this, and this is
Okay.
because technically the group itself is not an admin. The group can't do anything on the org. A group can't invite members as an entity. It's the members of the group who can do those things. So, and that's where you'd have group. So you're specifying it's not the group; it's the group members who have this access. And maybe we'll try it out after we run this test. So here, what we're saying is, again, Anne's still a member, Beth is still an admin. We have Dan now, who's a member of the IT admin group. So Dan is a member of the IT admin group. What we're saying here's where you see that nesting sort of thing. So the members of the IT admin group are members of the overall admin group. So by virtue of being in the IT admin group, now you're automatically a member of the admin group. And then here we're saying is members of the admin group are admins on the Contoso org. So before I go into this, you notice what we did. So now we have a group which is inside another group.
Yeah.
And the upper group is an admin on the org. So we expect everything in it, all the groups in it and the user in it to have, all the members of the groups in it to have admin access.
But that's not because of the way you define your authorization model, but that's just because you defined it as a fact in your relationship tuples, right?
Yes, it required both this. So in order to define the fact, we had to have this. We had to add this. But yes, nothing here specifies that groups are admins. What this is specifying is that group members can be admins. So here the model is saying here these are saying they can be admins. And here there's the fact where it's saying, okay, no, they're definitely admins.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
And so again, let's check. Anne is a member, not an admin. So Anne should normally be able to view and invite, as before. Beth, Anna admin should be able to
Do both.
invite. So sorry, Anne cannot invite. Beth can invite. Charles still being ignored, still not part of the org, still can't do
Poor
anything.
Charles.
And Dan is like the new member we added, but Dan is now part of the admin group. So even though Dan is not directly an admin, we still expect Dan to be able to do these two things.
It's an implied relationship, right?
Yep, exactly. So let's try this. Oh, I'm forgetting to save. So notice it's telling me group member is not allowed type restriction because it's still interpreting this. But if I now save, now it's happening.
Nice.
Okay, so I know this is usually trips people up. So this is a hard concept to understand. The idea of, like, we call this a kind of a user set. It's a set of users. It's no longer just a user, or it's a set of objects, if you will. So it's
using the pound symbol or the okay.
Yes, the pound symbol. So we're saying this is, like, again, the set of users who are members of the IT admin group. So that's why this is called a user set. It's like basically a grouping now. It's very meta. Building on top of that, so now we have our users, orgs, and groups. What more can we do? So here we're going to introduce the concept of a document.
Are we building Google Drive?
Maybe. To a certain extent, yes. And this helps you honestly build, like you can see so many B2B apps. Like this is are built this way, B2B2C actually. Like so. So we added a document. A document has a creator. So
Mhm.
I went and created the document. I'm the creator, but we can also specify an org. So I'm creating it within an org. And what we're saying is who can edit? It's whoever created the document or the admin of the org. And who can view is whoever created it or any member of the org. So again, members of an org can see all documents created within that org.
Mhm.
Admins can edit all of them. So again, we have Anne, Beth, Dan. They're still member, admin, member.
Mhm.
What we're saying here is now we have Anne who created a document budget within the context of that org. So and this is we'll probably get to this a bit in a different call or at some point. The
Mhm.
idea that when calling writes, you can specify multiple tuples in a transaction, and that's totally normal. So if something requires sending more than like joining a group maybe changes several facts, you send them all in one transaction and one API request to the server. It'll treat them as a transaction and write them together. This is one such a case. Anne created the document. So you want to say Anne is the creator. You also want to say this is within the org. So you send these two tuples in a transaction and the same thing. And here Beth created another document, the roadmap document. And let's see what happens. We're checking first Anne on the document budget, which Anne created. We expect Anne to be able to do both, right?
Mhm.
She created it. However, Anne on the document roadmap, Anne didn't create the document. Anne is not an admin on an org, so Anne cannot edit it. But
Yeah.
Anne is a member of the org, therefore Anne can view it. Beth, however, Beth is an admin of the org, so can view and edit everything inside it. Charles still hanging around there, still can do nothing. So let's test that out. And again, yeah, everything is passing.
Nice.
Um, yeah. So what else?
I have a question. So on the document type,
Yes.
when you're saying
Oh,
admin from org, member from org.
uh, thank you. I can't believe I missed saying that. Yes. So what we're saying here, this is the new concept we're introducing, and here we're referencing relations not on the same object. So creator, we're referencing a relation on the same object. Here we're
Gotcha.
referencing a relation on a different object. So when we're saying admin from org, conceptually what's happening is we're going and looking at all the orgs who are the orgs of this document. So in this case, it might be that there's a single org, but if you have for a reason like multiple, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or like a document can be in multiple folders, like in Google Drive, or how Google Drive used to be, you're getting all the parent things and then looking at this relationship there. So we're getting all the orgs that are assigned to this document and then looking at the member relation in them or looking at the admin relation in them in this case. So you kind of again we're going to this completely different type. We're going to this different type and referencing relations from there. So now if you're a member of an org that is the organization behind that document, you can access. Notice that there's nothing tying you as a user to this, like in the case of, let's say, Dan. Dan didn't create either document. There's no fact saying that Dan is related in any way to this document. It's by
Mm-hmm.
virtue of Dan being in a group, that group being the organization behind the document, that's where you're starting to see the power of FGA, where
Oh,
we're
okay.
relating all of this together. And as a user, you don't have to care about it. Like you're not building that logic. You're worrying about like building this relatively simple model, to be honest. And FGA is worrying about like how these relate to one another.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks
Gotcha.
for calling me out on the from. Yes. And just to add, like the thing after the from is the thing that's directly related. So it's going to the org, from the org, bring me the admins.
But does the org that string org is the same string on line 20, or does it have to be the same string
As
on
this,
line 6?
that's also a good question. No, it has to be this. So if we call this organization, then these have to be organization. So
Okay.
this is referencing this relation. This is referencing this relation. So if we change this to admin 2, this must be admin 2.
Okay.
And honestly, excellent questions. Thanks for asking.
I'm honestly wondering because I was like, when I first saw it, I'm like, so am I checking my relation or am I referencing the relation of the other type?
Yeah. One way to think about it is these are all relations. So these inside it, these are all types. So these are types between the bracket, except when you get to group member, of course. This is a type, this is a relation on that type. But between the brackets, generally, these are types. Outside the square brackets, these are
It's
relations.
relations.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Gotcha.
So
Nice.
lovely questions. Thank you.
Oh no. I see way more things.
Okay. We're starting to get a bit more complex, and trust me, we're going to get way more complex. We're still on basics, by the way. We haven't gone beyond the basics. Okay, so we still have what we had. We're now introducing the concept of a folder. So we still have a document. We still have groups and orgs and users. We now have a concept of a folder. We're sticking with Anne and Beth. Anne is still a member. Beth is still an admin. We're ignoring the groups for now, just so to simplify. So we're forgetting about the groups. We're concentrating on orgs, users, folders, and documents. So we have Anne a member, Beth an admin of the org. And creates a folder called product inside the org context. So again, there's these tuples that are in a transaction. Then Anne creates another folder called 2025 inside the folder product. So inside this folder, there's another folder. And now there's 3 tuples because now we have Anne being the creator, the org still being the org behind this folder, and we have this folder being the parent of another folder. And this is the first time we see it, but this is okay. You can have the user and the object be of the same type. A user can be another user. A group can be the parent of another group. These are normal. So this basically is specifying that 2025 is inside the product folder.
Gotcha.
And now and creates now inside that nested folder we have a document called roadmap, and again you see the same concept. We have now a folder. Inside a folder, inside it there's a document, and what we do is Anne shares that doc with Emily. Emily has again, like Charles we saw previously, Emily has nothing to do with the org, but we shared this kind of folder 2025 with her. So you see this common in Google Drive, of course. So sometimes
Yeah.
you things in Okta or in any company, and then you're sharing them with someone else. And so what did we have to do that here? Now we have the concept of a folder, which is this type, which we introduced. You'll notice it's very similar to a document because the way they work is very similar. But what the parent of a folder can be, a folder. Like a folder can be placed in another folder. A parent of a document is a folder. Still, you have the creator, site to an org. Who's the editor? If you're assigned an editor, so I can say, share it with you directly as an editor, or the creator. So if I'm the one who created it, I'm the creator, so I'm also an editor. Editor from parent. So anyone who can edit a parent folder can edit this. Or again, going back to the admin of the org can edit everything in the org. This is what's specifying that. And we're saying same as before. We had viewer is user or member from parent. Same thing. We're saying here is editor. Like all editors, of course, should be able to view, because otherwise it'll be weird. Anyone who's a viewer from the parent can also view. Notice we didn't specify creator here. Why? Because creator is already an editor, so it's included in this one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I have a question. So obviously with FGA stuff, we want to be like very granular into like specifying, this permission on like individual resources, right? But is there a way you can say, for example, in this use case, let's say admins can do absolutely everything. They can do everything. Is there a way you can specify that in this authorization model? Or do you have to do it with your tuples?
No. This is what the model is saying, because we're saying admin from the org, and it's going down all the way.
Yeah. But then
No,
you have to add it for each type or relation, so to say. Right?
No, you're only saying admin once. There's only one tuple saying that Beth is admin. The rest, you're saying the org. You're having to specify the org on each.
True.
And that is both admin and member and all these stuff. There's
Nice.
a small way to simplify having this one tuple. We don't actually need to add this. Org is org on a folder. So what you can do if you remove this is you'd say org or org from parent. But this will cause other issues. So you'll have to rewrite some aspects here. And it means if you move the doc, you'll have to make sure to now add this extra tuple, which is a bit of adding management. It's you're adding extra management cognitive load, having to do those. So it's much easier to just you're creating this folder in the doc in the org, just write the tuple with it.
Gotcha.
But if you want to simplify on tuples, we've had some people who prefer to have less tuples, sometimes for performance reasons, sometimes for another. There are ways to not to move around this. Side note, because you reminded me of something. In modeling, there is so many ways to achieve the same solution. It's not that there is this one way and that works and that's the best way. What the best way is really depends on your use case, in terms of how you want to grow the model, in terms of what your performance implications are. Like, do you have one or do you have a million tuples? There's some concepts here, like you were saying a group member is a member. That also depends. Like, do you have other relations? Like, do you have a group admin? Do you have a group can view, which would change how you're modeling this? So what the model is not really. It's not. It's not always that this is like, yes, this is the best model that can be. And that does trip some people up, because sometimes you read something in the docs like, okay, this is how they're doing it. This is how I must do it. It depends. Like,
on the use case.
We're trying to get people to a place where the model works. And then that's where they can start doing the optimizations of what's the best way to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. But it's hard to tell people to go optimize their model before they understand modeling in the first place.
Of course.
And that's usually the recommendation. Try to make something that's readable, that works for you, and then build in those optimizations, just so they don't trip yourself up and start missing like why something is not working.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what I was thinking at the moment. I was trying to go like, okay, but how can I reduce this? And it's like, how about you finish writing it first?
Which is a good question to ask, and it's always like, is reducing the things you're writing an important aspect right now or not? And that again depends. For various reasons, other people, like some people have, yes, I need this now because again, I have way too many tuples to manage. Migrations mean I need to migrate all those tuples, things like this. Other people like, hey, this is not right now something that I care about, so I don't need to handle it. Did we run the tests here? We did not run the tests here. Oh, the tests are passing. Yeah, surprise. Okay, nice. Yeah. So this introduced a lot of these, again, extra, like it's starting to get complex. It's still a fairly not complex use case, like conceptually, but when you're starting to see the complexity of the model, like, and that FGA is abstracting for you away. now, like, the reason Emily has access to this folder is completely different from the reason that Beth and Anne have access to this document. But and then that's important. Like, when modeling, the two things you need are to think of is, why should people have access to the things they should? And maybe it remind me to get that overview at the end about like how to approach this. Okay, we're 5. We're gonna take a small segue to introduce a new concept called conditions. And you're
Okay.
here. So we're gonna say goodbye to Beth and Anne for a second, and just focus on this. Also, heads up for people like working with the like store.fga, like this file, this kind of store file. You can have the model inline if you prefer. So if you don't, and this is if you're trying to ask for help from us, we usually try to ask you to give us a single file like this that has the model, that has the tuples, and that have the tests that are problematic, so that we can help you. So you can have the model inlined here.
Nice.
In this case, we don't have. But when you're trying to ask support from us, like, try to give us one that,
The
like,
whole
hey,
thing.
this one file, this is my use case. What am I doing wrong?
How?
Okay, so here we're going to something very basic. We have user, we have a document, and what we're saying is users can be viewers of the document assigned, but with a condition. So when I don't say Carla is a viewer of this document, I'm saying Carla is a conditional viewer of this document, and this is the condition.
Mm-hmm.
The condition is Carla must have a non-expiring grant and a valid IP address. So
Jeez.
just to show you this, what this is taking is a few things. 1, what's the current timestamp?
Mm-hmm.
2, what is the grant timestamp? What's the timestamp at the time of grant? Like, I'm saying, okay, you now have access as of like 2 a.m. This is the grant timestamp. What's the duration of the grant? So you're saying 2 a.m. for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's the grant duration. What's the current user IP address? So if you're checking in from VPN, for example, and this is the kind of allowed. What we're saying is this is the allowed IP address range in here. Of course, this is very basic. This is not. You probably have way more complex things later, but this is basically it. And what this is saying is the current timestamp must be less than the grant and the duration. With addition, like,
Mm-hmm.
when you add the duration to the timestamp to the grant timestamp, the current timestamp is less than that. And we're saying the user IP has to be within the allowed list.
Range. Let's put it like
Well,
that.
yes. And this is our test. We have one tuple saying Anne is a viewer of this document. You'll notice some things can be added when you're writing that fact. Not all. Current timestamp, you don't want to add it when you're saying that fact. You don't want to say, because of course it'll be wrong. It'll be like, now you're not actually doing the authorization. You're saying at the time, you're checking at the time of granting, which is wrong. So current timestamp, you don't want to add it. But grant timestamp, yes, when you're creating that fact, you're saying, okay, Anne is granted this access as of this time for 10 seconds, so long as Anne's IP address is within this range. So these things, these 3, we're sending them as part of the original tuple in the context. The current timestamp and the current IP address, we send them at the time of the check, because
Yes.
when we have them. And here we're gonna try a few checks. We're gonna try like Anne can access when and like from this time and IP. Notice that this, we're expecting it to be true because both of these fall within this 10-second range. This is like 3 seconds after this, well within the 10, and this
Yeah.
is this range. The next test, we're gonna say Anne. This is more than 10. This is 11 seconds after, so this should fail.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the IP address is not in range, so this should fail too.
Nice. So you're basically in the context, you're kind of sending what in my head I'm calling dynamic parameters. Those are the ones that are going to change. And then in the
Exactly.
tuple, I'm defining the static ones, so to
Perfect.
say.
Exactly that. Um, and here, like, we didn't introduce this before, and we don't like show it here because it's we don't go into much, but FGA you can call check, but that's not everything. You can also call something called list objects, which is pretty
Mhm.
cool because it's harder to implement than other like non-reback, which is given this object, sorry, given this user, what are all the objects they can view? We have a different thing called list users, which given this object, who are all the users who can view them. So we don't you don't see in the tests. I'm going a lot into that, but just to keep in mind, you can have these sorts of tests here, and
Mhm.
you can call FGA with them, which is pretty cool. So again, let's test. What we're testing is what we talked about before, and here we're trying to list objects with the same concept. So we're calling list objects. List me all the objects that Ant can view right now, and this is the current timestamp. This is the IP, and list objects would return whatever objects Ant can view. So let's get into that.
Nice. I like this.
All are passing. Yeah.
Surprise!
This is working.
Yeah. We're almost out of time, but we can continue for a few minutes if you wanna. You told me to remind you about a
Oh,
couple of things, and I forgot already what I had to remind you about.
yes.
It was
We're not,
it was
we're not
an overview and something else.
uh, okay. We're not gonna get into these later. We'll get into them at some point, which is
We will. We will.
so not today, but like keep in mind these exist. You can have bidirectional relationships, which is user is a member of an org and an org is an org of a user at the same time, and these unlock extra things. You can reference relations on faraway object. I'm not going to show it quickly, but you can, like, sometimes people ask us, hey, I want to do member from subscriber from associated, and this is not working. Why? Just heads up, like, it can work basically, but you need to write something here.
Define it properly. Yeah.
I did want
Can
to
we in the even if it's like quickly into the bidirectional relationship one, because I think that was really sounds really interesting to me. Very selfishly here.
I don't have it. I didn't model it.
No.
This is the wrong model. Sorry.
That's
But
fine.
quickly, I'll show you what it looks like. So we can have user type org relations. User. I love how you picked the only one I missed.
I'm sorry, but that's the one I was like, wait, how do you do that?
And now let's say document relations.
It's okay. That way you can entertain our viewers with some live coding as we go.
Define can view. All right. In this case, we're not going to say what we've been doing previously. We're not going to specify the org for each document. What we're going to say is who can view, it's the creator, or whoever works is a coworker of the creator.
Okay.
Now we don't have an org here, an org concept. And what we can do is just copy the tuples we have. It's basically the same use case. So we have Anne and Beth and Dan.
Let me see the object.
So let's stick with Ann and Beth. Both Ann and Beth are members of the Contosa org. And what we want to test is that Beth, did we call it? Oh, and let's say Anne created a document 1. We want to check that Beth can view document 1. These. Okay, so this is similar to what we were checking before, right? We were saying, okay, members within the same orgs can access, which we had where we had it here. We had member org, which required us to say, like on each item, what the org is, to add a tuple saying the org of the folder is this organization, right? And you were asking about that. How can we reduce those? So here, instead, we don't have that anymore. What we're saying is, can view is the creator or the coworker. What it required us to do is this kind of bi-directional relationship. So when you add a user to an org, you have to say user is a member of this org, and at the same time, this org is the org of the user.
Oh, okay.
And let's do that for Beth too. Okay, so notice here how we still have to add additional tuples, but the users not on every object, and this should return true. And let's see this live demo. Where are we? We're in January. Oh. Wait, Beth can't view. Why? Document 1. Creator, we said Anne is the creator.
No, we said Anne is the. Yeah, we did say Anne is the creator.
So let's do this. Oh, sorry, this is wrong. Yeah, and here what this is doing, who's the coworker? It's member from org, right? Because now you're only assigning like the org to the user. You're assigning like when I join an org, I join OpenFGA. I'm saying I'm a member of OpenFGA, but OpenFGA is my organization. And what this will do is will automatically handle this. So yeah, now all the tests are passing.
Nice.
So this is one way not to have the org all over the place. And there's like some of these, like bi-directional relationships. Again, some people like, why? And these are in a transaction, of course. We talked about this when one thing changed. I just joined an org. We're writing 2 tuples. This is normal, and it unlocks these sort of situations.
Nice.
Yeah, not gonna go into a ton into this. We already discussed this quickly. I forgot. You reminded me that we.
I remembered something that I forgot, but you mentioned it was an overview.
We wanted to talk about TDD, which we're not going to go into now.
Yeah.
And the overview. What overview? Overview of what?
I also don't remember what it was. But the good thing is that we might do more of these sessions in the future. So
yeah,
if we definitely look into it.
We'll try to keep that noted down as we go. But yeah, thanks a lot.
No, thank you for joining. I honestly learned a ton. There's definitely something different having someone explain to you what you like read in the docs or try it out yourself, because like I was trying to tell you what it sounds in my brain to see if that made sense. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't, but I think this was very useful for me. Hopefully it's useful for anyone watching. And I'm going to share the links that I share the links on the chat, but I think those went only to YouTube. So I'll also share the links on the LinkedIn post. And yeah, thank you very much for coming today. And we're gonna have, I don't know how am I gonna get you to come again, but you're gonna come again and
Um,
have more sessions of this.
One thing for the folks watching is we have the OpenFGA. Like if you go to our docs, you see a community page which links to a whole bunch of like stuff.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
let me share the link to the docs.
one important one is our CNCF channel. So OpenFGA is open source. It's been donated to it's now under the CNCF umbrella. It's in Sandbox. We're trying to get it to incubating. But so our Slack channel is in the CNCF channel under OpenFGA. Join, ask questions. Carla and I are there, and like a whole lot more of the OpenFGA team who've built this thing. And yeah, thanks.
And if you have any requests, feel free to open a pull request. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm gonna end the stream now. It takes a minute, so